Welcome to Law and Omen.
That was the first... Welcome to Law and Omen. No, I was just going to say it feels like the first time in forever I've seen you face to face.
It was, though.
It feels like so long. Yeah.
Like, when was the last time your birthday?
Jeez, that's February. That's a long time.
I know. Oh, so, I sent you the pictures of our steak that we fried the other night. Oh my gosh, it was so good.
Yummy. Oh my goodness.
It was such thick steaks. And then Pat also bought marshmallows and Mari biscuits and a Oreo slab.
Did you do s'mores?
We
so
did.
Good.
Oh, it was so nice. And I don't know if this is a thing that everyone does when they do s'mores, but to me, I felt so smart because I came out with this hack where you fry your marshmallow, then you take it off, then you'll be left with like the skin and then that little extra bit. So then I put a block of chocolate inside the skin of the marshmallow and block it up with the rest of it that was left over, and then sandwich it between between two Mari biscuits.
Oh, that's not. Ooh, that's a
and
good
then
idea.
the chocolate melts inside the marshmallow.
Oh, that's so clever. I've never heard of that.
I felt
that is very smart.
Like a genius. When it comes to food, I am a genius.
Oh, my goodness. I have to check something.
What?
Oh, no. Gordon Ramsay's a Scorpio. Oh, did you see my...
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's just
your anniversary.
Home.
Oh, no.
No, he just came home and brought me roses and salmon roses from Woolworths.
Oh,
because
nice.
it's my favourite. I think it's because I was feeling sad about Lily. Like, every time I see her walking on her 3 legs, and I'm like, ooh, and I was like, really just miserable, and so he just tried to cheer me up, which is so sweet.
Oh, that is sweet.
My mum came here earlier, like, surprisingly,
she came here. Rotis?
No, she's doing that on Tuesday, Rotis, yeah.
Okay.
So she's finally giving me Rotis
Nice.
Tuesday. I have to wake up at 20 to 7 so that she can drop it off before she goes to work on Tuesday morning. Oh well, I get Rotis, it's fine.
Lovely routine.
She brought me lemon meringue from Milk and Bean.
Oh, yum! You just got treated
I'm so
this
excited
week.
to eat
Nice.
it later. So excited. Is your story less tragic this time? Or equally in different ways?
Equally in different ways. Like, it's sad all round because it's also a case where I don't want to say anything because then I'm going to give it away.
Okay, yeah.
So actually, this story is our first requested story. My landlord Shelley actually suggested the story because
hi, Shelley.
Hello, Shelley, if you're still listening.
Probably not.
I wouldn't blame her.
It's always so weird how, like, you might know someone who knows someone. It's like so, that whole thing of, like, someone you know someone who knows someone. You know what I'm saying? What is that? 6 degrees of separation or something? I can't think of what it is.
I know what you're talking about.
I mean, you know.
If you know, you know. If you know, you know, and we definitely do know.
Yeah, of course. I know.
So this is the case of Rosemary Throne. I would say Throne because I'm Afrikaans.
I always think Throne.
Yes.
Yeah. Even when I see it, I think Throne.
Okay.
Charlize Throne.
Charlize Throne. She went... I never thought I'd say this on the podcast. I never thought it would be relevant. But when I was in primary school, I did Spanish dancing, with those...
Castanets. I want to do that so much.
Yes.
So you did flamenco. I'm so jealous.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just called Spanish dancing. And the teacher that I was taught Charlize Theron ballet.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So before I start, I just need to read my disclaimer. The following story contains graphic content and might not be suitable for everyone. The sources I use to find the information will be listed below in the show notes. everything I say is my own opinion unless it is stated as a fact. And obviously this goes without saying, but I mean no disrespect towards anyone I speak about. This podcast is merely serving as a platform for victim stories. In March 2013, Rosemary Throne would be reported missing by her daughter. It had taken a few days after her actual disappearance for the police to be alerted that she was missing. But this was due to the fact that she was a free spirit. When questioned, Rosemary's eldest daughter, the one who reported her missing, Phoenix Racing Cloud Throne.
Phoenix is a beautiful name. That's
Phoenix
great.
is cool. When questioned, Rosemary's eldest daughter, Phoenix Racing Cloud Throne, said that she had last seen her mother get into an unknown man's silver or white Mercedes-Benz just outside of Fishhook in Cape Town. Now, to us, this would absolutely like sound off all of the alarm bells. But as I mentioned, Rosemary was a bit of a free spirit. An article I read called her a quintessential flower child, an ethereal beauty who lived unconventionally and had in the past ventured from home on a whim.
I don't know how people do that.
Neither do I. I would love to be that free-spirited, but I saw TikTok the other day that says, I would love to be a person that goes with the flow, but what time does the flow start?
That is so perfect. Oh my goodness. And what do I wear to the flow?
Yes.
And where is this flow happening?
And is that start time a soft start time, or is that the time we meet?
Yeah. What time is everyone going to be there?
Exactly.
When should I show up? So that I'm like, not too early, but not too late. I don't want people waiting for me.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Should I eat before the flow happens? Or
what time is it going to end? What time can I go home without seeming rude? Okay, so in the past she'd ventured from home on a whim. Telephone records show that just before she would go missing or get abducted, she made a phone call to friends, and after that her phone was switched off for the last time. But everyone expected her to be back in a few days, because on the 11th of March, it was her 40th birthday and her youngest daughter's birthday.
Oh, so it's still so young.
When she didn't show up on the 11th of March, people began speculating what had happened to Rosemary. Some were saying that she was human trafficked, while other people said, no, she's too old for that. I was like, I don't think there's an age gap, age limit for a woman to be abducted and abused. Exactly.
No. There's not an age limit for rape. Why the hell would there be an age limit for trafficking?
Exactly. I was also stupid to me. So while others thought that it could have been an abusive ex that, came and took her away, or not abusive, just an ex, maybe a disgruntled ex-boyfriend.
Yeah.
During this time, Phoenix would take care of her sister, and her boyfriend, Kyle, got a job at a surfing shop in Muizenberg. But as you can imagine, the salary he earned there wasn't enough to take care of 3 people. But luckily the community rallied behind them, obviously feeling heartbroken by the situation, and they donated funds as well as groceries to the 3 of them. They moved to Gordons Bay in June that same year, and Phoenix's younger sister, I know, that's literally right around the corner from us. Phoenix's sister was put into a new school here, and they all seemed to be, happy. Phoenix would regularly post updates on Facebook, and she even posted messages to her mother on social media. In one post writing, quote, "We talk about you every day and pray for you wherever you are. Don't worry about us. We are happy and strong," unquote. So days turned into weeks and turned into months, until finally, after 6 months, Rosemary's body was found in a shallow grave near Strandfontein Pavilion off Baden-Powell Drive. Her body was pointed out by a 20-year-old man named Godfrey Skeepers. So
That
now
must suck being the person. Sorry, that
No.
must be awful when you find a body, you know, like you just out doing normal things and you're like, oh, well, that's a dead person. Like, that must be so traumatic in its own way.
So now I think it's a good time to give some background on this whole story on Rosemary and on Phoenix and all of them. So Rosemary was a 39-year-old hippie. Basically, she was a hippie. That was who she was. She and her first husband or partner, I'm not really sure if they were like officially like married in the eyes of the law. It doesn't really matter anyway.
Probably not.
If they were free spirits, like I kind of highly doubt that they would have been married in like a court. Oh, not a court. You know what I mean? So
legally.
they were both free spirits. Her and her first partner, husband, whatever, were both free spirits, and they tried to live off the grid as much as they could. And in 1994, the couple welcomed their first daughter, Phoenix Racing Cloud Throne. Rosemary was 20 when she had Phoenix, and the family lived in a caravan traveling to different locations in South Africa. It was said that the parents would basically follow festivals around as they traveled through the country, like circuses, festivals, whatever you want to call them, following something around. The couple would...
Chanelle's like, I don't go out. I don't know what a festival is. Like, we have our own Burning Man. I assume she would be there.
Oh, yeah.
What do we call
Africa
it?
Burn.
The one in the Peru? Yes, Africa Burn.
I'd
So she
really
probably
like to go
went
to
to that
Africa
kind of
Burn.
thing.
Not to do drugs and stuff. To do, like...
I want to be a
there's
vendor.
Yes, that's cool. There's art installations
So-
and stuff
yeah.
that I want to go and look at. And, yeah, but... like,
Yeah, I was
I'm
actually
scared
looking
that
at
the
being
people
a
are gonna
vendor.
irritate me.
Oh, yeah, they probably will. But if they can
Everyone's
be
on
high and
drugs.
buy from me, that's great.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's
So
true.
Just come and spend your money on me.
That's very true. And you are like a very aesthetically pleasing...
It's festival wear.
Yes. Especially like your, like the full sets and stuff and the bras and stuff like that would do
Yeah, the
really
bras
good there.
and stuff, yeah.
The couple would sell handmade puppets, trinkets, and sometimes even food as a means to get by. I know, the puppets were very random. I wonder if it's marionette
Puppets,
puppets
so
or if it's
bizarre.
like hand puppets.
I hope it's hand puppets because marionettes freak me out.
I had a marionette when I was growing up, but not a doll. Not a
Of
doll.
course
It's
you
not
did.
weird. It was an animal. Can't remember what animal it was, but it was an animal.
Oh, okay, that's less threatening.
And I also saw sources saying that they would sell them from their caravan, but then I also saw some sources saying that they actually traveled around. They also traveled around in a horse-drawn old wooden cart to sell these items. So reportedly, sometimes they also even stayed in abandoned vehicles and buildings overnight. So nonetheless, you get the picture of them trying to not live a mundane life, like trying to live off the grid, hippies. They were hippies. They were quintessential hippies.
Yeah.
But I think this sort of instability can really affect a child. In my opinion, it could affect a child. Like
Yeah.
nothing's ever constant. Nothing is ever consistent in your life. I don't know. How do you feel safe when your environment is always changing?
Yeah.
But then again, I don't know because I've never been in that situation, and I'm sure that some people do travel with their children and do live a less conventional life, and that their kids are fine as well, So anyway, okay. So
Well, I mean, oh no, I was just gonna say it's like military kids. Like, I mean, Bas as well.
Yeah.
When he was a kid, they moved all over. Like, they would live in like Sudan for like forever, and he's like this kid from
shit.
Germany, and it's like, what am I supposed to do in the desert? You know?
Oh wow, I
Yeah,
didn't
he
know
lived there
that.
for a few years.
That's interesting. Speaking of things that could affect children as they are growing up, the couple would smoke marijuana and do psychedelics in the presence of Phoenix.
Oh.
And this would obviously lead to them not really giving her the attention that such a young child needs. According to Encyclopedia on Early Childhood Development, quote, Child neglect can have severe detrimental effects on children's physical health, psychological well-being, cognitive and academic abilities, and social development. Neglected children may have significant internalizing problems such as withdrawal, somatic complaints, anxiety, and depression when compared to physically abused and sexually abused children. Like adults with a history of physical abuse, adults with a history of neglect are at an increased risk for violent criminal behavior, unquote. 3 years after the birth of their child, Phoenix, Rosemary and her husband or partner decided to end their relationship. Phoenix's father went to live on his own, while Phoenix and Rosemary stayed in the caravan. The two of them would eventually end up living in a community farm in Naisna. It's like a farm where other people were also living in caravans, and it's like a community farm. They grow vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. Still living off the grid.
So it's like a trailer park but with a farm.
Yeah, kind of, basically, yeah. So this does kind of sound idyllic, like living on a farm, growing your own fruits and vegetables, like really living off the grid. But Phoenix would later recall that she would be left alone for hours at a time without food, while Rosemary was out, quote unquote, meditating. I don't know. Yeah, with the history of drugs, I don't know if she was meditating or medicating.
Yeah.
In 2000, when Phoenix was around 6 years old, Rosemary decided that her next adventure, going to South America, was not going to be an adventure she embarked on with Phoenix. So she dropped her off at her father's.
Oh my god, okay. Just like that.
And went abroad, yeah. He was living in an abandoned building as one of many people. Like, they basically converted the abandoned building to make little makeshift homes, like little apartments of their own. So her father was reportedly more stable than Rosemary, but I don't know if I agree with that personally. Just because he was still very much into partying and everything that goes with that, so alcohol and drugs. So not really the environment that a 6-year-old should be exposed to, in my opinion. Especially when there are other older men around doing the exact same thing. And one night, one of these friends, her father had over, I don't know, either coming back from a party or having a party there, they'd been drinking, whatever. Trigger warning. One of these friends sexually assaulted a young Phoenix in her bedroom. So she was very young at this time.
She's a baby. What the hell?
She's
I
like
don't
6,
understand.
7. Yeah, 6.
How do you look at a baby and think, I'm going to hurt this person? Instead of that instinct to protect. Like, something is so wrong.
And a few years later, Phoenix's grandmother's boyfriend would also sexually assault the young girl.
Ugh, no.
Horrible. And the impact and the trauma that leaves on someone, So about a year after Rosemary left for South America, she returned pregnant. Phoenix lived with her mother again, and Rosemary would give birth to her second child, a boy. She delivered her son with the help of other women in the community, literally right outside the caravan that she and Phoenix lived in. So it's then reported that the family would move back and forth between their caravan and another abandoned building similar to what the father had lived in, like a similar situation. They seem to have lived in a transformed bus in Whittling eco village as well, described on their website as, quote, evolved from an abandoned and vandalized hospital complex into a holistic, environmentally friendly village of micro-businesses, non-profit organizations, and social enterprise services. It is a vibrant and diverse village community that provides jobs, food security, and youth development to the local, neighboring, and outlying communities in the region.
Sounds good on paper.
In 2005, when Phoenix was 11, her brother was 4, Rosemary would become pregnant again. When Rosemary returned from the hospital after giving birth, where she had given birth to a second daughter, she promptly put the newborn in the arms of an 11-year-old Phoenix and went to sleep. Phoenix would basically become responsible for her siblings, being expected to change their nappies, to feed them at night, and to wash the nappies because it was probably like reusable nappies, cloth nappies, and washing them probably as well, and their clothes, and just being a mom basically at like 11 years old.
That's so wrong. Get another adult to do it. Don't get your 11-year-old baby to do it.
Don't put adult responsibilities on your children. Rosemary also did not believe in traditional education. She didn't want Phoenix to attend school. I heard on one of the podcasts that I was listening to, I think it was Bella Monsoon's podcast or episode on this on her YouTube channel. She's saying that when Rosemary spoke about school, because you'll see that Phoenix does go in and out of school, but she would basically say like the teachers are bad people and the kids are weird and stuff like that. So really like trying to influence Phoenix into not wanting to go to school. And I'm not saying school is great, and I'm not saying that school is the best place to learn things, because it's not. But I mean, you need a formal education if you want to get anywhere in today's society, So she didn't want Phoenix to attend school, saying that you learn through living life, basically. And then, obviously, because Phoenix was unfairly the caretaker of her two siblings, she almost had to stay at home to care for them. So she was, quote-unquote, homeschooled by Rosemary, and then she was also self-taught. She ended up schooling herself when she was in grade 3, and she really, really wanted to go to school and get an education. She was really determined to do that. So it's unclear.
That's so sad.
I know. So it's unclear when exactly, but Rosemary got married again, or, got a partner again, whatever. And this would be a very toxic relationship, one where the police would be called multiple times. Rosemary would kick the man out of her place numerous times, but they would end up getting back together, kiss and make up. A classic toxic relationship, And so the children would be exposed to domestic violence and the trauma that surrounds that as well. According to Times Live, quote, her mother sent her to live with her father at the age of 12, and she was homeschooled until she was 16, when her father enrolled her at Neisner High School. She then started drinking and smoking dacha. Dacha is weed, marijuana. And she started attending trance parties with her mother.
I would say, at least she's going with a parent, but, I mean, we know that the parent is not the greatest caretaker, so it's like...
I don't know. So I think...
it's tough.
So I think she, like I said, was homeschooled and self-taught for most of her life. But I believe she also attended Fishhook High School for a while before going to Neisner High School, because there was talks about her going to Fishhook High School, and then her mom not paying school fees and stuff like that, so she was kicked out.
Okay.
It was during her high school years that she rebelled, as I mentioned. Despite her rebellious nature, she managed to pass matric quite well with 2 distinctions and a whole bunch of B's. During her final year, a very impressive feat. During her final year in high school, she also volunteered at Rape Crisis, as well as other NGOs. She was the editor of the school newspaper, and she attended a few leadership camps. During this time, Phoenix would meet Kyle Macero, who was a year or so younger than Phoenix. Kyle came from a broken home. Obviously, Kyle's going to sound familiar because, like I mentioned in the beginning, he's her boyfriend. He came from a broken home. His mom passed away shortly, I don't know shortly after he was born, but he was very young. And his father couldn't take the responsibility of raising a child. So Kyle would basically be moved from house to house between family members and extended family, never really finding a stable home. So after being bounced around by family and extended family, he ended up in foster care. And this is when Kyle would start experimenting with harder drugs, and he became addicted to Tik. which is crystal meth. He would become addicted to the drug and would be expelled from school due to his use. He managed to get into another school, but he would also be expelled from this school because he had been caught stealing on multiple occasions. Kyle went to rehab after this and was then enrolled in a new school upon his return with the condition that he stay clean. Unfortunately, Kyle relapsed and he was expelled once again. The principal of this school even described him as, quote, a troubling and challenging child, which is really heartbreaking. Kyle was sent to his third foster home in Neisner, where he probably for the first time felt some stability and love. His foster family really received him well, and the family really loved him. They had a passion for art and culture and stuff like that. The foster dad is actually a writer in Neisner, and the family would actually bring out the creative drive in Kyle. They taught him to sketch and stuff like that, and he actually also took a photography course and was generally well liked by everyone who taught him. He was also let into another school this time round on the condition that he stayed sober. It is here on one of the leadership camps he attended that he met Phoenix. The two instantly connected and they would start dating. A few months later, Phoenix fell pregnant. The two decided to move back to Cape Town, Fishhook, and Phoenix would move into Rosemary's caravan and Kyle would move to Clovelly, thank you. There's it in my head.
Is that how you say it? Oh.
That's how Nicole Claire, go and watch her YouTube videos. She's also a great resource that I use all the time. She used to live in this area and she pronounced it as Clovelly. So
okay.
I'm going to go off
if you
of
live
what
there,
she said.
then,
Yeah.
Exactly.
So Kyle would move to Clovelly, which is a small suburb right next to Fishhook. It's hidden in the mountains, kind of, apparently.
Okay, good, because I've never heard of it.
Neither have
it's
I.
hidden in the mountains, I don't feel bad.
It's apparently teeny tiny. It's very, very small.
Okay.
In the same Times Live article, they stated, quote, when she moved in with her mother in Cape Town last year, she found her house in a mess and her younger sister uncared for and dirty. Her sister was 8 years old at this time. So it was this time as well that Phoenix also found out that Rosemary sent her son, Phoenix's brother, to live with his father, whom he had never met prior in South America.
Seriously?
Because that's a good idea.
Oh. And just sent him alone on that trip.
I know, it's so freaking far. I remember when, my sister and I used to fly back and forth between my mom and dad, because my dad lived in Joburg and we moved to Cape Town. Even that is, we were, two of us were together, but even that is pretty nerve-wracking as a child.
I was early 20s when I went to Brazil with a group of people that I had been staying with for 3 months, so I got to know them and stuff. But that was an 11-hour trip. Yeah. It's still scary, and to be that young and go by yourself to someone you've never met, that's terrifying.
So Phoenix terminated her pregnancy not long after moving back, and she and Kyle would move in together into the house that Kyle was staying at in Clovelly. Though it seems like the couple ended up moving into... this is where I got really, really confused. Because I have one source that said that the couple would move into Rosemary's house/caravan. But then I also have a source that said that Rosemary would move in with the couple.
Okay, I see.
Nonetheless, somehow they all end up moving in the same place. I think there might have been I don't know, because Kyle, it said that he had a house in Clovelly, so why would he move out of the house into a caravan, So I think that...
Yeah, that's true.
Everyone moved into the house that he was living in. So it wasn't all moonshine and roses. There was quite a bit of tension between the people who were living there. Rosemary didn't like Kyle and really didn't want him to be dating Phoenix. So the tension, and this is where I got confused again, because here it says the tension was so intense that Rosemary had asked the couple to leave, which they did. So I think maybe the couple might have moved in with her initially, like when they first got there, before Kyle got a place to stay or something like that. Because that makes sense to me. They left and they started camping on the mountainside, but when they were robbed of all their belongings, they asked to come back because obviously they were feeling very unsafe and vulnerable, and Rosemary agreed to them coming back. So I think that probably did happen, but like I said, I'm not 100% sure on who was living with who. The thing that also most likely contributed to there being tension was Kyle's drug addiction, specifically his struggles with Dick. The couple, Kyle and Phoenix, would wake up in the morning, smoke a joint together, and then more often than not, Kyle would go on to smoke Dick after that. Rosemary was obviously not happy with this, as both her previous partners had suffered from drug addiction. Phoenix was of the opinion that her mother should basically butt out because she didn't have a leg to stand on to berate Kyle for his drug abuse, because of how Rosemary had used drugs and stuff like that while Phoenix was growing up. So Phoenix and Rosemary regularly got into arguments, and Kyle would also get involved. So during this time, neither Kyle or Phoenix worked. In the one podcast I listened to, they said that Phoenix was basically saying how she was still recovering from her abortion, and the emotional toll that takes, and obviously the physical toll I can imagine that it takes. During this time, Rosemary worked as a stilt walker and a clown, entertaining people at parties and carnivals. And she would obviously then have really late nights, generally speaking. She would come home in the wee hours of the morning and would obviously get up a bit later. She would sleep a little bit later than black people who work a 9 to 5, or people who are home all day. So on the 7th of March, she was awoken because of a noise that was coming from the kitchen. Kyle was cleaning, and apparently pots and pans were knocking about, and that woke her, and she got up quite irritated, as you would be if you come home very late and you're trying to sleep. And she voiced her disdain, and an argument ensued. This would wake up Phoenix's younger sister, and Phoenix tried to comfort her and make things better, because I'd imagine that this child already lives in a state of constant stress, similarly to what Phoenix might have felt when she was younger, growing up with her mother and the abusive ex and stuff like that. Rosemary calmed down and went to sit in front of the computer, where Phoenix approached her to talk about sending her sister to school, because once again Rosemary did not want to send the sister to school. And Phoenix really wanted her sister to get an education, and Rosemary kind of waved the idea away, and she said she was going to homeschool her and she didn't want to send her to school, and she wanted to travel around like they always had before. After this conversation, Rosemary got herself ready for a gig that night. She was putting her makeup on and stuff like that, and basically shooed the idea of formal schooling away. She didn't want to talk about it further. It was not going to be something that she wanted to do. As Rosemary got ready and eventually left for work, Kyle and Phoenix had made breakfast for Phoenix's sister, and they finished cleaning the space. When they were done, they decided to smoke together again. Now, when I say smoke, I mean weed. Phoenix, there was no reports of her ever doing tuck or anything like that. It only ever spoke of her drinking and smoking weed, which, I mean, she's very young, so it's not great, but you know what I mean. And this is when Kyle reportedly mentioned that it would be better if Rosemary wasn't around anymore, and Phoenix agreed. Or some sources said that it was Phoenix that was actually the mastermind behind the plan. So there's a little bit of disagreements with who originally came up with the plan. But there was a source that said, like, when they were thinking about how to get rid of her mom in the beginning, she said that, let's just come up behind her and hit her over the head with a spade or with something, and then just leave it as is. And then Kyle apparently said, okay, no, that's a little inhumane. Why don't we strangle her?
Because that's better.
Okay, so Rosemary arrived home at around 7 p.m. that night. She left early for work, so she came back a little bit earlier. And she had been dropped off by a colleague. As she entered through the gate to the house, she was greeted by an apologetic Phoenix. She was smiling and hugging her mom and apologized for the argument that morning. With her guard down while Phoenix was embracing her, Kyle approached Rosemary from behind with the plan of strangling her with a piece of rope that he apparently found on a pot plant there. But at the last minute, he lost the nerve and backed out.
Okay.
Seeing that he couldn't go through with it, Phoenix led her mom into the house and she put her bag down on the counter and she goes in to give her mom another hug, a big hug. And as she does this, she makes eye contact with Kyle and she stares daggers at him.
Yeah.
Basically telling him, you need to fucking do this now. So Kyle tries for a second time, and this time, trigger warning, he actually put the rope around Rosemary's neck. Stuck in this quote-unquote hug, Rosemary had no way to fight, and Kyle and Phoenix led her into the bedroom where they shut the door. They put her on the bed with the rope still around her neck, and Kyle still holding onto it. But during the move, the rope slacked a bit. Rosemary was able to fight back a bit, by kicking and flailing around. And Phoenix reportedly shouted at Kyle, first of all, not to look her mother in the eyes, and to keep pulling the rope tighter and tighter, and to keep doing it until 4 minutes have passed, and the last sigh came out of her mother's mouth.
Okay, someone did research.
Exactly. That's literally what I said next. And that's exactly what happens. Rosemary stopped flailing around and she sighed out her last breath. The sound of which frightened Kyle, and he stumbled back while Phoenix comforted him and thanked him for doing such a great job. The next plan of action for Phoenix was to bury the body. She wanted to move on with the plan, you know. And she told Kyle, come on, get up, we must go and get this sorted. And Kyle basically is in shock or, in disbelief at what he had done, said he didn't have the strength or the courage to be able to do that right now.
Yeah.
So instead, they put the body into black bags. They did all of this while the youngest sister was at home, in her room. They carried the body outside to the yard and put it under a trap. I don't know what type of trap. They just said trap. They went back into the house and cleaned up the blood that was on the floor because due to the strangulation, Rosemary's ear had bled.
Oh, no.
No. And then Kyle smoked took and weed intermittently throughout the night, while Phoenix, she went to bed. She slept because that's, just a normal day, apparently. The next morning, Phoenix woke up and Kyle had literally been up the entire night. He didn't sleep a wink. She asked him again to bury the body, and he, blaming the wind, said that he couldn't do it on that day. So the very next morning, the two of them went out to dig a shallow grave right between their house and the police station. There's I know.
Sorry.
There's a wetlands area. There's a wetlands area between the two locations, so I don't know exactly how close they are together, but it's still, right on the police's doorstep. Remember, they're still living in Clovelly in Neisner, and they've just buried her there. So now you're probably wondering how Rosemary was found near Strandfontein Pavilion, right? Well, so let's go back to when Phoenix, Kyle, and Phoenix's sister moved to Gordons Bay. Although Phoenix had been non-stop posting how happy they were and how the new school was so amazing to his sister, Kyle, on the other hand, was spiraling. He was still using Tuk, and I'm assuming on a daily basis, probably multiple times a day. I mean, if he was using so frequently during that one night. Like, I feel like, you know, you can't de-escalate an addiction. You only escalate an addiction. So he kept thinking that the body would be found. I think part of that is also obviously paranoia and stuff like that. Well, they were living in Gordons Bay, and eventually Kyle befriended a young man that lived on the same property / in the same complex that they were living in. And his name was Godfrey Skeepers.
You mentioned his name before.
And now that name rings a bell because he led police to the body. So the two of them became very, very good friends. Such great friends, in fact, that Kyle would share what he did with Godfrey and eventually convinced him to help him dig up and move the body. So one night, the two men drove from Gordons Bay to Clovelly. They dug... Also, like, Kyle by this time, I just need to reiterate that he's like 18.
Oh gosh, I forgot how young this... Wow.
He was 17 when he committed the murder. So 17, 18, around there.
Oh no, that's bad.
Yep. And I mean, Godfrey Skeepers was 20, you know, like so young.
Yeah, not that much older, yeah.
So one night the two drove from Gordons Bay to Clovelly, dug up the shallow grave, and they then put Rosemary's body in the back of Godfrey's car.
Oh my goodness.
And that's when they drove down Baden-Powell Drive, where they buried the body again. And afterwards they went home. So Godfrey couldn't stop thinking about what he had done, and obviously what Kyle had told him, and he was feeling incredibly guilty. He started journaling about it. He journaled the details that Kyle told him about the murder, his involvement in the murder. And 2 months after Godfrey helped Kyle, he drove back to Fishhook and went straight to the police station, where he gave them his entire journal and confessed to his part in the crime as well.
Wow.
Like,
thank goodness.
How scared you must be to do something like that, even though it's the right thing to do. Like, it does take courage, and I'm not like foregoing, or I'm not erasing or trying to erase what he did. What he did was 100% wrong, and he should never have done it. He should have talked to the police as soon as he was kind of approached with that. But I also don't know.
Maybe he was scared.
I was just about to say the situation between him and Kyle. I don't know how intimidating Kyle is as a person, or how convincing he might be as a person, you know?
Yeah. And if you know this person killed someone before, like, what's going to stop them killing you if you don't comply? Exactly. So there's that fear, yeah.
By late September, Phoenix and Kyle were both arrested for murder. They appeared at Simonstown Magistrates Court, where they were just two happy campers, apparently. They were giggling and smiling at each other. At one point, Phoenix even rested her head against Kyle's shoulder. You know, really sorry for what they've done. In contrast, Godfrey appeared sullen and serious. A week later, they were back in court, but with very, very different demeanors. Phoenix was crying the whole time. She was like hiding her face in the crook of her arm and crying. And Kyle, for some reason, was wearing like a t-shirt with a whole bunch of holes in it. And he seemed to be zoning in and out the whole time, like, you know, of like reality, I guess. And allegedly he had been attacked and robbed of his possessions while he was in Paulsmoor. And also apparently he was threatened with rape, and he was stabbed with a small piece of metal. After they both dropped their bail applications, Phoenix would turn on Kyle and she would take a plea bargain. She blamed him for everything and accused him of being behind the entire plan. Her trial came before Kyle's, and she was sentenced to 20 years in prison with 5 years suspended, so effectively 15 years.
Okay.
Kyle was actually released on bail. He was under house arrest at his foster family's home in Neisner, which I don't understand. So he was released on bail for a few months before his trial. During this time, he was having a blast and posting about how happy he was on social media. He even went to the beach. He was just living a fucking normal life. And this, rightfully so, infuriated Rosemary's family. Because she left behind a mother and a sister. When his trial came around, he claimed that he couldn't remember a thing from the day due to all the tip that he had been smoking prior and during and after, just blaming it all on drugs. As a response, he was sent to Falkenberg Psychiatric Hospital for an evaluation as soon as a bed became available to see if he was fit to stand trial. So this was in 2013, 2014 by this time, during the trial. And a bed only became available in 2015.
Jeez.
And I'm not 100% clear on if he was in house arrest for this entire, year or however long it was until he could go to Falkenberg. I have no idea if he was in prison. I have no idea if he was under house arrest. If he was under house arrest, it's fucking unfair. I don't understand that. He still did what he did at the end of the day.
Yeah, he had a choice. And if he backed out the first time, then he knew what he was doing.
Yep.
He was not drugged up that he could not understand.
Yeah, that he had no cognizance anymore whatsoever.
Yeah.
After his 30-day evaluation, it was ruled that he was indeed fit enough to stand trial. And in October 2015... I would just like to reiterate that Rosemary was murdered in March 2013. They were arrested in September 2013. So, okay.
2 years.
This time he took the plea bargain. Basically, he pleaded guilty and he said that there was no excuse for what he did. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison. 5 years being suspended, so in other words, 13 years in prison. The ruling was as such because Kyle was only 17, as I mentioned, at the time of the murder, and you cannot impose a life sentence on a minor according to the Child Justice Act. So both Kyle and Phoenix are currently serving their time in Bolsmoor. Godfrey was never charged. He never went to prison. I think the charges were either dropped, pulled, retracted. I don't know.
But he would just, if anything, it would be accessory after the fact. That's...
Yeah, no, it was never it wasn't going to go away for years and years and years. After everything that transpired, Rosemary's mom had to seek treatment at Stickland Psychiatric Hospital as she fell into a deep, deep depression. She actually ended up losing a leg due to poor circulation. And the only reason that I found was that her body's mechanism stopped working.
That's so sad. Shame.
And then Angelique, Rosemary's sister, would complete suicide at 35 years old, 10 days after Rosemary's memorial. When a family friend broke this news to Phoenix, she was shattered. And apparently she cries every day realizing what she had done. Phoenix's family has since forgiven her and wants her to know that she is loved, although Phoenix's grandmother has not been to see her yet. They believe that Kyle is not sorry for what he's done and accused him of, quote, changing his colors like a chameleon when it suits him, unquote. And that's a very, very tragic story of Rosemary Throne. What I was going to say in the beginning before I stopped myself because I realized it would ruin the story is such a sad story because the perpetrators are also in their own right victims, and this is not condoning what they did by any means or by any stretch of the imagination, but like I always said, you can't help but feel sorry for the children that they were. I'm not sorry for the adult. I'm not condoning what the adult did, but the ultimate victim was Rosemary because she unfairly lost her life. It wasn't theirs to take.
Ugh.
Oh.
I don't like your stories.
I know. I also don't like my stories. That's why I take such a long time to research them. Before we go on, let's take a small break.
I'm gonna crack open my new box.
Yes, crack open your new box. I am going to get some more water.
Stop making me look bad.
I'm not. I'm making you look like the fun one, which you are.
You are kind of fun.
Kind of. Thank you. I've never been a phone person.
Yeah. Was that like the first time we ever spoke on the phone? I was so surprised. I was like, oh gosh, what's happening? Chanelle's like, she's phoning me?
I know. You must know it's an emergency if I phone someone. Like, because I will do everything in my power not to phone someone. I will send a voice note. I will send a message. I will do everything I can. I will send a fucking postcard via pigeon.
So I hope these notes make sense. So
I hope
hopefully they do. Because I thought since last time I did like true crimey stuff and I did haunted dolls and stuff, I thought we need to do like actual hauntings. So I thought, why not the Sally house? Like this is supposedly
I hate this.
Supposedly like one of the most haunted houses in America. It's in Atchison in Kansas. And this house was built first during 1867 and 1871. The first owner of the house was Michael C. Finney, and his family moved in with him. That's wife Kate and the children James, Agnes, and Charles. It's said that the family stayed in the basement while the construction of the house was being completed. And I also only realized the other day how big Americans' basements actually are. Like some of the basements are like the entire house, like downstairs.
Yes,
it's so big.
I would not like a basement though. I feel like it always smells like damp.
I would think demons, but okay. Like that's why I'm scared. I don't want to be alone down there, like locked underground. But it smells like damp.
But it must.
Michael Finney died in the house in 1872. Agnes, one of the daughters, moved back into the family home in 1906, and she got married to William True in 1913. William, her husband, died in that house in 1918. So that's only 5 years after they got married that the husband died.
Oh, wow.
And then Agnes died there in November 1939, which I think is 20 years later?
Yeah, quite a few years later.
1918 and 39, yeah. Don't ask me to do math. So then, at some point after this Finney family lived in the house, it is said that a doctor had lived there. He had his surgery in the front or in the bottom section of the house, I'm not entirely sure, and then his family most likely stayed upstairs. So the story goes that one day, a mother came in all frantic. She's holding her daughter, a 6-year-old named Sally, and this little girl had severe abdominal pain. The doctor said that, okay, this is appendicitis, and because this girl was in so much pain and, crying, he was like, okay, she needs immediate help. So he was like, okay, we need to operate. Gives her anesthesia, but didn't wait until it properly kicked in because he's like, okay, we need to operate. So I started operating on this 6-year-old before the anesthesia kicked in. So then suddenly she stopped screaming, she became limp and pale, and she died on the operating table. And, it said she was possibly thinking that this man was torturing her when, he was actually just trying to help her and save her life. No. But, if you die in that, you're a child, you don't understand a whole lot, and you don't know that trauma that could last. So that's kind of said to be the origin.
Yeah, no, I could imagine it's confusing because, you're in pain. I don't think you're really even taking in what's going on around you. And like you said, you're so young. That I honestly think it's just you go blank a little bit. I think it's almost not like an out of body experience, but like similar.
You dissociate to save yourself.
Yes, dissociate. Yeah. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. So then different families moved in and out the house from then on, but where it really started to gain traction is December 31st, 1992. The Pickman family, Tony and Deborah, moved into the house. They were newlyweds and they were expecting their first child. The baby, I think, was due in June. So they moved in, set up a nursery for the baby, and their dog started acting strangely around the nursery. It would stand there and just bark at something. They thought, okay, maybe the dog's just adjusting to the new place. They ignored it. And after about a week, the dog stopped. But, again, trust your animals. If they don't act that way. So their baby boy was born in June 1993, and from the period when they moved in, from January to June, they experienced things like cold spots in the house, lights flickering and blinking, and dropped calls on their landline. Like, they would just be talking and all of a sudden the call just goes away. It just disappears. Which is not... So since this was their first home, they were like... And because it's a house built in the 1800s, they're like, maybe this is normal. Yeah. Maybe this is what houses are like, especially old ones.
Yeah, maybe it's a draft that they feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like when you move into an old house and you hear creaking and it's like, well, maybe that's just the sound that old buildings make.
The wood settling.
Yeah. Yeah. So once the baby was born, things started to escalate. So my nightmare, the electronic baby toys would turn on and off by themselves.
I hate that.
Which I just
hate that. That scares me so much. I would, if I ever had children, which I like right now, I can't see my future with children. But if I ever had children, I will never buy them a fucking electronic game or toy that works like that, because I would be scared to wake up in the middle of the night because one of those are going off.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah. That's so terrifying. Oh,
you will get wooden toys.
So we will whittle it ourselves on the porch.
Yes. Go chop down that tree.
So, one day, Deborah was vacuuming the nursery, and the wind-up baby mobile above the crib started moving and playing by itself.
No, I don't like that.
The fact that it's like a wind-up thing as well.
I hate that. Do you hear the thing winding up, that before it starts going? Can you imagine?
That's terrible. No. But Deborah had this feeling that her baby was being woken up during the night. Like, she just felt like he was always crying. He just wasn't, sleeping well. And then a neighbor asked her why she kept the nursery light on all night. And she's like, we don't. Like, the baby's actually been sleeping in our room. And she's like, well, that light was on the entire night. So something was keeping that light on. Then Corin, Deborah's sister... Deborah's sister, came to visit in July 1993 to help out with the newborn. And on Corin's last night at the house with the family, it was said, quote, that we were pushed over the edge of disbelief and through the door of terror, which is very poetic. Yeah. When they arrived back from being at the in-laws, Tony asked Deborah why she'd placed all of the baby's toys on the bedroom floor. Tony took them upstairs and showed them the nursery, where all the toys were placed on the floor in a circle, all facing outwards.
Nope.
They were like, maybe the brother came in and played a prank on them. Who knows? So they put everything back and were going downstairs. Then Deborah looked back up and saw that the light was on, even though they all saw Tony put the light off. So they went back to the nursery, and one of the teddy bears they had just put away was in the middle of the room on the floor, on its back.
No.
So they were like, okay, put this away. And then they went out of the room, and later on when they came back, the bear was in the middle of the floor again. So they're like, okay, this is too much. So the next day, then Greg, Tony's brother, came over with his camera. And he said, as he was there with his camera, he's like, if you're here, do you want to have your picture taken?
No.
And then as he took the photo, the bear spun on the floor in front of them.
I'm just waiting for you to tell me that they've put that when they're going to put this fucking house on the market and move.
So after this, the family was like, I'm out. And Tony was
about time.
He was putting the baby into his car seat. He was on the couch downstairs, and he was busy getting the baby in, and he felt a sharp pain on his lower back. So they left, they went to his parents' house, and when they got there, Deborah was like, let me see your back. And she found 3 scratches down his back.
Oh, no.
I will say it later, but they have Zach and the crew go there from Ghost Adventures, and they show pictures during the episode of all the times that Tony was scratched. And these are big scratches, all the on his back. It's hectic. There's a lot of scratches on different occasions. It wasn't just one time. And I don't know if it's because this spirit, say it is Sally, she's mad at men because it was a man who was torturing her. So she goes after the men.
Okay. Makes sense.
It could be said, but like he was the one who was getting scratched all the time. So July 29th of 1993, a psychic called Barbara Connor was asked to come and see the Pickmans. So Barbara, she sat quietly in the house and she tried to communicate to the spirits, and she was able to give them a name, and she gave them the name of Sally. So Barbara had told them that Sally would kind of let them know that, quote, a friend was around by lighting a candle, which is disconcerting.
I don't like that.
Yeah. And when Barbara saw the spirit, it was a little girl, and things would be fine, quote, if Deborah was patient but firm with her. And then, later that year, Halloween, 31st of October, 1993, Tony came home from work in the early hours of the morning. He got a cup from the cupboard in the kitchen, turned around, and saw a young girl. She had a white dress on with a white ribbon in her hair, and he then realized, like, I can see through her. I can see the cupboards behind her. So he actually sketched a picture of what he saw. So years later, I think it was years, a resident who stayed at the house before the Pickman family said that he had a 5-year-old daughter at the time, that they lived in the house, and that his daughter had an imaginary friend named Sally. And if he scolded his daughter, she would say, quote, I didn't do that, Sally did it. Which is very much like, Robert did it.
Yeah.
Or, quote, Sally told me to do it. So then, because Tony had drawn what he had seen in the kitchen, he showed it to this guy's daughter, and she's like, yeah, that's Sally. Like, that's the girl I used to be friends with.
She ain't no girl.
Yeah. So events that have been witnessed, yeah, exactly. Because they masquerade as little girls for some. Because little girls are creepy, let's face it.
Yeah.
So events that have been witnessed by visitors to the Sully house include video and investigative equipment that just stop working, batteries that are full immediately and completely draining. They experience moving objects, unexplained scratches or bruising on their bodies during or after the visits, physical touches, mysterious coldness, and trained guide dogs refuse to enter the nursery. Like, animals just do not like this room, which is a bad sign.
Trust the animals.
Yeah. So this is quite a long quote, but Tony said, I saw that little girl twice, and the second time I saw her, it was not a pretty thing. She was tugging at me, trying to get me out of bed, and she kept reaching for me, and I would pull back, and when I pulled back, she would reach harder, and about the third or fourth time she grabbed my arm, I still get chills and almost choked up on it, because it scared me that bad. She turned into, I don't know how to describe it. It was part animal, part human. It almost looked like it had rotting flesh. I still remember seeing worms crawling through it, and it growled at me. Oh my god, I thought I was going to pass out. Which sounds like a demon. Like,
yeah. That sounds like
especially if it's like a sweet little girl
see.
before. Yeah, no. So then I watched the Ghost Adventures episode, and Zach was speaking to Joe Butner. He was part of the police department, and he was in the force during that time that the Pickmans lived in the house. And Zach said to him, like, you responded to calls and stuff. Do you think they made this up? And this guy Joe said, like, no, they had no reason to make this up, and they had nothing to gain from this. Like, they didn't, get anything out of this. They had just moved in a few months ago. They had a newborn. Like, this is a difficult time for newlyweds, and then to have all this stuff happening. Like, you don't get anything out of that. There's no, like, publicity and stuff like that, So then Zach spoke to a tour guide called Denise Pridemore, and she works at the house, and she often leaves with bruises. And she said that she doesn't think it's just the house. She thinks it's the land, because she sees a Native American on the property. And she doesn't think that Sally is a girl at all. She thinks it's a woman. Because apparently, at some stage after the Pickmans had lived in the house, a woman lived there, and she had created a pentagram on the floor in the basement and did animal sacrifices.
Oh.
Then this woman, Denise, says that she kind of feels or hears the spirits or entities in the house kind of saying that they're not happy that Zach is there, him and his team. Like, they should leave because they're not welcome there.
Normal.
So
I would say
then
the same thing.
I wouldn't. So then Zach meets Tony and Deborah Pickman, the couple that used to live there. And Tony said, nothing happened the first few months, and then slowly things happened, like lights flickering or pictures on the wall ending up upside down, subtle things like, there's actually a photo they showed briefly. It's a photo of the nursery, and there's like this blue like light in the room, but like you can almost see through it, so it kind of seems like a camera glitch, but I've never seen anything like that. It's like this just blue light like forming in the room.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's not like a perfect circle, it's like kind of a weird shape. So yeah, I mean, you can say like that, especially since it's in the nursery where people, or animals especially, feel something off.
Yeah.
So, of course, Zach was like, hey, Deborah and Tony, I know you said you'd never come back, but how do you feel about joining us for an investigation? And they're like, maybe. So they both ended up joining. Zach also had a psychic medium called Anissa Buhe. I think that's her surname. I don't know. I might have mistyped that. But Zach was like, Sally is said to be a young girl. This is a young girl. She seemed like a teenager, the psychic. So they went in, and apparently he didn't tell the psychic anything about who the Pickmans were and all that. Zach is like, let's check Tony's chest and back for scratches so that, they can see if there's anything. So then they get into the house, and the psychic says it feels really heavy and she feels a girl's spirit. Then Jay, one of the Ghost Adventures team, his arm starts to burn, and they actually see like a little bit of a scratch forming on his arm. And then the psychic is like holding her head and like, I need to sit down, feeling very uncomfortable. And then she says the bad entity won't leave her alone, and it really wants Tony to go downstairs, but she doesn't think that he should. So then Tony's like, no, I need to face this. And they all go down to the basement. So Deborah, the psychic, and Tony go in there. Zach won't go in the basement because of mold contamination, and we know he's got sensitive lungs. So Aaron does go with. Yeah, that's why he often wears like masks on some investigation, like dust masks, because So Aaron does go with, of course. He's down on the stairs, and on the spot where the pentagram was supposed to be, where the sacrifices were supposed to have happened, the psychic like feels a strong energy, and Aaron is like I said, standing on the stairs. He feels like really heavy, and the psychic is like, she basically nearly faints. Like, they have to catch her because she's like falling over. At the same time, they show different angles. The dad, Tony, he's like feels something scratching the back of his head, and he's like, oh, what is that? So both of them are having a physical reaction at the same time, and they go outside and they look, and he's got like a welt on the back of his hairline. Like, his hair is really short, and on the back it's like a welt, like something scratched him and like injured his neck. And it's at the same time that the medium is like, I don't feel good, like she's basically fainting, So then later on, they were busy at the hotel, busy testing their equipment. They're going to go and set up later on, and Billy is setting up their paranormal puck device, which has a database of around 2,000 words, and apparently like spirits can kind of like choose the words that they want. So he's doing test questions, and the response he gets, he says, as a test, am I alone now? And the paranormal puck says, think, up, huge, dead. And he's like, fine, random words, okay, it's responding. And then the next question, he says, is Sally real? And the device answers, scratch, Satan, pain, kept spirits. And it was just really weird because they were on the pentagram where supposed satanic rituals with sacrifices happened, and he got scratched. And it's just like, of all the words, that's so for the rest of the investigation, there was like knocks here and there. Like, they didn't really get that much from like answers, but also the BuzzFeed Unsolved, they did 2 investigations there. I think the first and last, and they like did the flashlights on, I think, on both occasions, and they got responses with the flashlights. So apparently this house is just, it's got a lot of energy. So we don't know, was it Native Americans on the land? Was it a little girl that was that died in a traumatic way? Is it the family that first built the house? the family members who first lived there, who built the house. Because, I mean, the guy, the dad who built this house, he lived in the basement, and then I think it was like 2-3 years after they moved there, like, he died. So he didn't really get to enjoy his house. Like, there's so many things it could be. Could it be that when the lady doing rituals was there, she opened portals, she invited other spirits, she strengthened entities that were there before? Because again, like, if it's like demons like masquerading as innocent kids, as like little girls or whatever.
To gain your trust,
yeah, exactly. So you don't know, it could be any of the above. But apparently, it's one of America's most haunted buildings. And I think at this point it's abandoned. And now it's just open for tours and things. So people like pay to go on tours, and like there's bus tours and things around there. Because apparently that area is quite haunted in general.
Where is it again?
Atchison in Kansas.
Kansas.
So that's like Sally House. Exactly what I was thinking. I mean, it's a creepy looking house. Oh, no, you know what? Actually, sorry. Last night, I was like, it's 10:30. Let me go to bed early for once. But you know what? I'm going to actually put on like body lotion because I haven't done that in a while. I need to take care of myself. So I'm sitting there and I'm like massaging my foot and putting lotion on. I put Lily on the bed because the 2 cats are on there. And I'm like, she is usually on there. I turn around after I put my 1 sock on and I see a wet patch. I'm like, great, Lily's peed on the bed. So I go and I take the cover off, put it in the washing machine, take the part of the duvet where she's peed on, rinse it out, wash it out, and then I sit with my blow dryer for like half an hour trying to dry this as much as I can. Put on a new bedspread, put it onto the bed, do my other foot, fine, try and go to sleep. Then Bass comes to bed, and Lily's there, and he's like, oh, hi, Lily. She's like, she wants uppies, so we put her up on the bed. And then 5-10 minutes later, he's like, Lily, did you just pee on this bed? And she literally peed on the bed again.
Oh my god, why, Lily?
Like twice in an hour, she peed on the bed. And I'm just like, whoa. Like, all I wanted to do was look after myself and sleep, and you're making this so difficult. Like, I know you just had, like, surgery, but, like, come on. It's no excuse.
Together. Anyway,
so on that pissy note,
this has been Law and Omen, and you can email us info@lawandOmen.com.
You can visit our website lawandomen.com,
and we have an Instagram and a Facebook and a Reddit and a TikTok and do we have Pinterest?
I don't think we do, but we do have a Twitter, I think.
We have Twitter, we have...
Just look for Law and Omen, you'll find it.
Law and Omen.
Yeah.
And we post every Sunday. And please rate and review us. Share us with your friends. Yeah, sorry for how long this episode is, because I regret to inform you, but this recording is 175 minutes long.
Oh,
it's almost
goodness.
3 hours.
I mean, last time when I edited, it was like 1 hour, 20 minutes that I got it down to. I'm just resigning myself to the fact, like, we can't just get it to 1 hour sometimes.
Yeah,
thank you, Chanelle. This was great.
Bye.
Bye.
This is great.
I'm going to eat my lemon meringue.
I'm going to wait for Patrick to bring home Nando's.
Nice.